Jonathan Davis, economist and wealth manager, has been tweeting us about the economy as well this morning. Jonathan, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Adrian.
Now, Jonathan, how bad is this economy, this recession? If I've got the FT, the Financial Times, the Pink 'Un telling me this morning, global economy pushed to the brink. If the Sun says it, I'm not worried. If the Daily Mail says it, I'm not worried. If the FT says it, man, I'm worried.
Yeah, they want you to, but that's a separate issue because what the FT is pushing, they're pushing for stock markets to revive. They don't really care about your listeners. They care about the people in the city. The reality is that, you talk about how hard it is. People have no idea how hard it's going to get. We haven't seen even a half of it yet, because what your trade unionist guy said a couple of moments ago is that Labour borrowed vast amounts of money and pumped it into the system. Actually, he didn't say that. He said they invested it into the system. Total utter rubbish. What they did was paper over the cracks pending the general election so they could buy some votes. And the reality is, yes, it stimulated things for the short term. What it meant, however, was that we're landed with even more debt than they already had placed us in. Thus, that's the reason why everyone's cost of living is going through the roof. Because by borrowing all that money, our currency, sterling, went through the floor. So all our import costs went through the ceiling.
Jonathan, let me just understand that then, because effectively the government printed money or it borrowed money. There were more pounds in circulation, and therefore the value of each of those pounds to investors reduced. Like anything,
exactly.
there was too much of it, and therefore the value of each one of them declined. Now that meant that the value of the pound declined, that the value of our currency declined. Yes.
Yes, that's exactly right.
And what impact does that then have on the wider economy?
Because everything is priced in dollars, whether it's petrol or a global food production, heat, light, clothing, you name it, everything's in dollars. Because our currency went down 25% against the dollar, therefore we started importing higher and higher inflation. And that's the reason why your listeners are finding it tough, because their earnings or their benefits are not rising in line with inflation, because previous governments have borrowed to kingdom come, decimating our currency. And that's the problem that we're in now. So I'll tell you what, your listeners think it's hard now. They have no idea how hard it's going to be. That's the reality. And my suggestion is that instead of us having the plan A or plan B nonsense, it's total nonsense, because there's very little difference between Labour and the coalition. Even though they pretend there's a Grand Canyon, actually there's a wafer-thin crack. There's very little difference. Plan A and plan B is 20 years of depression.
Well, Jonathan,
that's what we're in right now.
Well, Jonathan, you can't plan for depression. The unions are saying, let's have beef up the minimum wage. Have you got any crumb of comfort, any option that we could pursue to get out of this?
Absolutely. Yes. We could have 2 years of hard recession and then 20 years of growth. Instead, we're having 20 years of depression.
And how do we get the 2 tough years followed by 20 prosperous years?
We stop bailing out banks and we cut public sector spending firmly as opposed to meekly, which is what we've done so far. And anyone listening to the radio says, but the cuts are massive. What they should do is look at the figures. We are cutting meekly. So we need to stop bailing out the banks. We need to cut public sector spending firmly, and that will strengthen our currency. By doing so, it'll be the opposite of what I just said they have been doing. It means that our cost of living will fall, which means, okay, initially earnings will fall, but it doesn't matter because your standard of living will stay the same. And if our cost of employment and if our cost of living falls, I tell you, it will raise employment and it will give us 20 years of growth.
Jonathan Davis, fantastic to hear from you. Wealth manager, economist, joins us on Twitter at Adrian Goldberg.